Hello everyone and welcome along to your Wednesday night edition of the TII podcast. I'm so used to being a Monday, I had to remind myself several times that it was in fact Wednesday. Joining me tonight, I have Kieran Wallace. How are you doing, Kieran?
Brilliant, thanks Greg. Yourself?
Yes, good, thank you. Glad we've got a Rangers game to look forward to. Glad that it's on the back of a thumping 4-0 victory at the weekend, and hopefully we'll be able to get a Europa League group stage back on track. I think it's fair to say we were all dreading the European games had Michael Beale still been in charge, but looking forward to tomorrow night. Are you looking forward to it as well?
Yes and no. Kind of once bitten, twice shy because of the last result away to Limassol. But there's a wee bit of a buzz amongst the fans again about Ibrox with Clement coming in and the display that we've seen at the weekend. So tomorrow's going to be, how would I put this, give us more of an idea of what he's got about him and what we'll expect to see as Rangers fans and of his Rangers team. And I don't think it gets tougher than because I can't spit my words out tonight. When we played there the last time, they were quite a tricky opponent at home, and we'll get on to talking about them later in the show. But yeah, half looking forward to it, half a wee bit nervous, but even a point would go a long, long way for us in this group. What about yourself?
Absolutely. I'm thinking back to the last time we were there. It was Calvin Bassey's centre-half debut, wasn't it? And that was that turned into a disaster, but it all went positive from there, I guess, and we know where that season ended up as well. Right, let's have a look firstly at our Europa League campaign so far, I guess, and just get some of your views. See some people in the comments already. Please give us your thoughts, give us your opinions, and we'll bring as many up on the screen as possible and discuss them as we go through. We'll talk about the Europa League campaign so far. We'll talk about the recent history between Rangers and teams in Prague, and then we'll move on to some of the comments from the press conference from Philippe Clement, and we'll start to overhead to predicted lineups, etc., as well as we do normally do with our preview. But looking at where we are currently, Kieran, in the Europa League group stage, when the group was drawn, I thought it was quite a favourable group and one that we could really attack, I guess, and look forward to. One win against the hardest team in the group, Real Betis at home. One defeat against the weakest team in the group, going by the seeding. It's been very Jekyll and Hyde in terms of the performances so far. What have you made of the campaign in the first two games, and I guess where do you see that leaving us?
Yeah, you're bang on with Jekyll and Hyde. When you look at the performances, you could arguably say the result against Betis was Beale's best result and probably best performance as Rangers manager. That night we all just turned up, not really knowing what to expect that night because of the mood around the place and how the team had been performing. And then we move on to probably his worst result and worst performance as Rangers manager. I've seen people comparing it to Progress Niederkorn, and it's definitely up there. They're a poor side. But the Betis result has set us up perfectly. We could not have asked for a better start to our Europa League campaign. And the defeat in the last round, I remember being on the warm-up pod before we were in that game, and we didn't really consider defeat there because we are quite a good team in Europe. We're quite a solid side when it comes to Europe. Albeit, even when you look at the Europa League run all the way to the final, apart from Dortmund, we weren't great away from home, but we grinded out results. And I think that's what tomorrow night might shape up as, that we need to grind out at least a draw. But there's nothing to say that we can't go there and get a win, by all means. But yeah, I'm going to try and stay positive regarding this one. Albeit, if we do get at least a draw, you're thinking you've got Limassol at home, you've got Prague at home, last game away to Betis. Your fixtures are set up really nicely there. But I think I'm being far too positive for a side that's just not done it.
I was going to say, I've been very optimistic so far.
Yeah, you're as optimistic as me.
Well, after the weekend's game, I am a bit more optimistic than I was. I don't really know what to expect from this Prague team, if I'm honest. I've listened to a few different previews. I've read a bit about them. They seem to be a very different team from the one we played back in that Europa League run. I think they were described as being a much more modern football club now in terms of how they approach stuff, how they approach recruitment, how they approach their style of play. So it'll be really interesting to see how that kind of fleshes out. We've obviously seen one game so far from Philippe Clement. It was an impressive game. He didn't go as far as calling it impressive. He basically said it's a start. The players took on some of the seeds, the early seeds that him and his team started to plant, and we saw that in some of the play that came forward in the game against Hibs. So on the back of the Hibs game, I am positive. I think Sparta Prague, we know they're top of their league at this moment in time, so they must be in decent form. They beat Aris Limassol 3-2, I believe, in the first game, and then lost out to Real Betis. I guess the results have kind of gone how we would expect them to for Sparta Prague so far. It's a bit of a strange situation. So at this moment in time in the group table, I guess, Kyran, which all 4 teams are on 3 points. I think as fans, we probably feel we should be in charge of the group on 6 points at this stage, but it's not the case. Looking ahead to this game, firstly away in Prague, and then the home leg, obviously it's a double header. Do you see sort of 4 points from these 2 games putting us in a really strong position in the group and the potential for going through?
I'd sure hope so, and we'll definitely know more tomorrow night after the game, and more or less what type of side Prague actually are when we come up against them. But I think 4 points is a minimum ask, and I think when we talk about expectations for Clement for the season and expectations for this team going forward, it's that 1, we win the League Cup, 2, we win the Scottish Cup, and 3, we progress from this group till after Christmas. So I think this is his first taste of pressure as a Rangers manager. I know there's no such thing as a Rangers manager that's not under pressure, but the expectation is there that we do progress for this group. So minimal 4 points from both these double headers. But the biggest and truest cliche in football is you take it one game at a time, and got to go out and get something tomorrow night.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to bring in some of the comments that we're seeing so far. And as I said at the start, if you have any thoughts, you agree, disagree with us, whatever, pop a comment in and we'll bring up as many as we can. Pete Lawrence saying here the players proved they have something about them, but there's definitely more to come from them under this manager. D.I. Rebus says this game will show if the players are taking on what the manager wants when we're out of possession. He's highlighted us moving as a team off the ball a few times. What are your thoughts on, I guess, where the players stand at the weekend? When I saw the starting lineup, it kind of hit home that the manager's changed, but we've still got the same players. They proved they do have something about them during the game at the weekend, and they had taken on some of the early instructions. For example, the way that we were pressing Hibs, and then the way that we set up defensively into a bit of a more rigid 4-4-2. Are you expecting to see more of that tomorrow night against Sparta Prague, and are you expecting to see more of those, I guess, changes or tweaks from Philippe Clement that we'll start to see a bit of a style and a bit of a way of playing?
Yeah, it could be quite interesting, Craig, because we'll come on to it. I know the left back situation just now is something of big discussion, and no one's really sure what we're going to do with that. So I have said we'll have more of an idea what Clement wants to do, but maybe we won't. It might be something different tomorrow. It might be 3-5-2. Our hand might be forced in that sense. But in terms of on that comment there, the players taking on what the manager wants. You've probably got better experience of this than me, having been in his press conference at the weekend, that when this might not seem a big thing to a lot of people, but when he talks, I want to listen. I want to listen to his press conferences. I want to listen to his post-match interviews. And I've not felt that with a manager since Gerrard. Now, Gio would have bored you to sleep. That's just his personality. It's just how he is. Beale talked too much, and probably a lot of sound bites in there and cliches as well. But I feel with Clement, he's got that aura about him where you want to kind of hang on his every word. So for me, if I put myself in the players' shoes, they're not bored listening to the instructions. Things are pretty clear and they're taking on board what he's saying. And this is something we've been crying out to see, that some of these players need led by the hand. We've seen that they've not won anywhere near as enough trophies as they should have. So it's the here and now. But I don't know, did you feel that with him, having sat in front of him?
Yeah, I've been sat in front of him in the sort of post-match press conference on Saturday. He's one of these guys that has a. Gerrard had it as well. I wouldn't say Gio had it, and I don't think Michael Beale had it from when I sat in front of them. But Philippe Clement has a presence. As soon as he walks in the room, everyone stands up and takes notice, or sits up and takes notice. He clearly thinks about every single word that leaves his mouth. Michael Beale was criticised a lot for talking too much and letting too much go and being inconsistent with his messaging. I don't think we'll get any of that from Philippe Clement. He's very particular and he's very deliberate with everything he says, and he's most definitely a manager that I would not want to get on the wrong side of, especially as a player. I don't think he'll be scared in bombing people out if they don't toe the line and they don't do what he wants to. And I think for too long we've spoken about some managers that just have their favourite players and they just keep picking them even if they're out of form. I don't think that's something that we'll see under Philippe Clement. Even in his press conference today, having watched the video from Prague, he again was very deliberate in what he's saying. He was very careful not to hype up anyone too much. He was very measured in his words, and we're going to talk about some of the stuff he said. But I'm very impressed by. He's clearly a manager that's been there and done it and won titles, and you can tell that. He's not a project manager. I think we were all wary about whether we'd get a project manager and it would be the same again, a bit of a test. He's clearly not that. He's come in here with a clear plan. He's come in here to win, and I don't think we could ask for any more. Might take a bit of time. He's already said that, and whether the fans have the patience. I think, having seen what happened on Saturday, the way we played against Hibs, the reaction from the fans, it's almost like that one game will buy him time if he needs it, because he's shown what can happen with just a little bit. So what we all want to see what will happen if once he's had 4 weeks on the job, 5 weeks on the job, etc. So I think he's a very impressive person. I'd imagine that comes across to the players as well. It's now him finding his way with this team and what he can do between now and January to, like you say, win us the League Cup, get us through the Europa League group stage, keep us in as much touching distance, get a bit closer if we can in the league, and get to January and see where we go on that one. A few more comments coming in. James Glasgow saying, I think the best we can hope for is to win our home games. If we can get a point in one of our 2 away games, that's a bonus. Snicky Bear says, manager has respect for the players, talking to them before and after subs. He is at the side shouting continually. For a hill, saying Clement's first real test. We'll need to show bottle. It's like you said, I think, Kieran, it's a really difficult test for us. Probably you go as far to say it's a 50-50 game between the two teams on paper. You go into what is going to be a bit of a hostile atmosphere. I think probably describing it as a bit of a hostile atmosphere is going to be a bit of an understatement, but there's been a lot of talk about Rangers in recent history with the city of Prague, with Slavia Prague, Sparta Prague fans joining forces effectively with Slavia Prague fans to hate Rangers. There was an interview broadcast in the Rangers Review yesterday. A Czech journalist said Rangers are universally hated by Czech football fans. How much does that kind of thing play into this game? It's always been a few years since the Glenn Kamara incident. It's been a few years since the only school children were allowed to attend the Sparta Prague versus Rangers game. How much do you think that plays into this game? Do you think it plays in at all to it?
100% it does. 100%. And it just leaves that horrible sour taste in your mouth of, like, you've got a journalist, right? Or, well, do we call him a journalist, or do you just call him someone off of Twitter, coming out and saying that we are universally hated? A player of Slavia Prague found guilty of racially abused one of our players, and then the young fans, the kids of their rival, booed our black players every time they got the ball. There's something wrong there. It's appalling. I think they've got an absolute cheek to release a statement today, and it's one of the ones where it's kind of like, well, we've done something about it, and if they boo or they make any comments or any gestures, then we've done our bit. It certainly feels like that. It doesn't feel like they're trying to sort of shake hands and make friends again and sweep everything aside that's happened. Like,
yeah, I did see their statement, Kieran. I don't know if I saw the one that you saw, but it was almost like we know there's stuff happened in the past, but let's be friends now and hope Rangers enjoy their trip to Prague, etc. So I don't know if that was a follow-up kind of thing to the one that you saw, but it does seem a bit of a strange build-up between the two clubs.
And let's not forget, the social media stuff still goes on with guys like Kemar Roof. And if you remember the banners that they held up after the game, like, it was horrible. It's one of the worst things I've seen in football in my time anyway. The level of abuse that our players actually took at the hands of both Prague teams. And like, racism aside, usually when something happens with your rivals, you throw your support behind the opposite team, if you know what I mean. But they seem to join forces and just all become racists together. And it's horrible. So for the good of actual normal people, I hope we get the win tomorrow.
Absolutely. There's many reasons why we hope we get the win, and that's definitely one of them. It's it'll definitely be a hostile atmosphere, like you say. It'll play into it. Hopefully, from my side, that'll be something that galvanizes our team, and we don't kind of shrink away from it as such.
I hope I've not just set the comments and fire them. We've been infiltrated by the Czech Republic.
No, I think you're all right so far. We'll see later on when you're properly called out and you're found out. But no, I think you're fine just now. But it'll be a hostile atmosphere. It'll be interesting to see how this team reacts. It'll be interesting to see how Philippe Clement. I keep going to call him Paul Clement, but it's Paul Clement, isn't it? He used to be the assistant manager of Chelsea.
I nearly called him Jeremy the last time we were on the pod.
Well, doing well. But it'll be interesting to see how he sets us up as well, and we'll go on to talk about our predicted lineups as such. So let's move on to the press conference that happened earlier this evening in Prague. It was about 6:30 UK time, I believe, that happened. Philippe Clement and Todd Cantwell answered some questions from the press. I just want to pick out some of the main talking points. And Kieran, you picked on one of them a bit earlier, and that's the left back situation. It wasn't actually a situation I considered when Borna Barisic went down in the 4th minute or the 5th minute of the game against Hibs, but it was it's definitely one that's been brought into focus. Obviously, Borna Barisic injured. Philippe Clement said he hopes he'll be back next week, so not that long an injury, but still enough to keep him out tomorrow's game again in the Czech Republic, and then the weekend game against Hearts. Dujon Sterling is injured. Ridvan Yilmaz is not in the squad, and I'm going to come on back to that question in a bit, Kieran. But just for context, Philippe Clement said, I look for solutions, so there will be another player to fill the left back position and do the job for the team. I expect everyone to work together. Whoever steps in will be able to do the job. I think that's an interesting insight into his mentality. First of all, I think it's everyone's working for the team. It's one man out, another man steps up. It's almost I know you're an NFL man, Kieran. It's almost that NFL mentality of we just keep going no matter what. And if someone goes down, the next person steps up and they'll do just as good a job. Is that one that makes you happy to hear about? Is it one that impresses you? Is it one, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, 100%. It's situational football, I think they call it. Everybody plays in a system that they understand and they play different situations. And this is a situation that we're in, that the next guy up has got to step up. In terms of something that we've been crying out for again, like we look back to Gerrard's team that last won the league for us, it didn't matter who came into that team, they all played the same system. Everybody knew their role, knew what they wanted to do. We had 3 or 4 guys up front that it didn't matter who played. They all knew their role and what they were going to do, and we seemed to score goals regardless of who it was that was playing. I could probably say that about Gio as well in that European run, that he played a very specific system that when guys came in, they knew their role, and albeit maybe you get more quality from some than you do others, but they all played within that system and knew what they were doing. But slightly aside from that, and looking at this left back Ridvan Yilmaz situation, that now that Beale's gone, right, and we're sitting back and we're currently in this position now.
How baffling is it? It's
Oh
so
my
baffling.
God. But it kind of like, it absolutely screams out to me that here is the massive difference between Michael Beale as a coach, who we know is exceptional, and Michael Beale as the manager, who doesn't know the difference between a player being out for 2 to 3 weeks, because after that European squad, he was back in our first team playing domestic football, and we're talking, when did we play? To the 8th of December. So you're talking 4 months. So is there communication there between a medical department and the manager, or is the manager just took a pure guess that the left back we paid £5 million for isn't good enough and he's going to use his injury as an excuse?
I think we probably got a bit of an insight into that from Philippe Clement, actually, when at the weekend, I think it was his preview interview or his pre-game presser for the Hibs game, and he spoke about how the medical team have been surprised how close he wants to be to the injured players and to understand their current situation and when they'll be back and what their treatment plans are. It's the kind of thing that strikes me as every manager should do that, and it should be quite an obvious thing. So for Philippe Clement to highlight that in a pre-match press conference and to say that the medical team were surprised, that's a worry for me as to where we were.
Yeah, 100%. And I think as well, when you look at that outside the box for players that are injured, and we do have a lot of them just now, I think if you look back over the last 10 games, you should probably take note of, I think we've had an injury or two in every single game. Yeah. It's almost like injury roulette with us, but good to see a couple back at the weekend. But in terms of working close to the guys that are injured, like we talk about man management, we talk about personal skills. Being injured in football, especially for medium to long term, is a horrible thing, and it can grate in guys when they're not around the team, they're not around the dressing room. It's just them and the physio. And aside from that as well, Craig, someone, I can't remember who said it might have been in our group chat, it was very, very apparent to me when Todd Cantwell put his Instagram post out, and then so did Danilo. They both thanked the medical staff. They both made a point of doing that. So to me, that speaks volumes that they really appreciate what they're doing, because these guys are probably feeling it as well in the medical team at Rangers, because they've had a lot to handle recently. They probably thought at the end of last season, right, God, we've got a break now. We've got all these guys going out, you guys coming in. Hopefully next season's better, and it's almost went the same way.
What do you make of this comment from D.I. Rebus? Some of our players were hiding on the injury list. Do you agree with that? Do you think some players were taking a bit longer than they needed to?
Well, see, when you said the thing about Barisic, he might be back next week. Excuse me. I'm a fan of Barisic, and I'm not one to sit here and call him a coward. The last time he got this injury, he was fit for international duty the next weekend. Come on. If you remember back as well, when we first signed him, Gerrard wasn't sure of him. And I think, what was the friendly I was at Ibrox? Was it like the Helsinki game? And we were trying to get the best out of him. And he went down injured. And it was kind of like nobody really treated him quickly. And Gerrard came out after the game and said, yeah, he battered the ground 50 times and he was calling for medical staff and maybe he should have just got up. So it's quite apparent that, I know I'm going back a wee bit further, it's quite apparent that Borna Barisic is a bit soft.
Paul McGarrigle brings up Philippe Clement. I think we all looked at that Swedish starting lineup from the international break last time, and he was straight in there after 2.5, 3 years of just being constantly injured at us. It is quite grating at times when you see it, especially in players who were important to us and who have been important to our team in the past. As soon as they leave, they're almost up to speed within a month or two and ready to go. And Philippe Clement was, I guess, the prime example of that.
Yeah, you do realise that when Roof leaves and moves on to his next club, that he's going to turn into Prime R9 with the best knees in the world.
We'll buy him some robotic knees and he'll be absolutely fine after he leaves us. But no, I think the injury situation is really interesting. It's one that Clement has brought up quite a few times already. He's frustrated by it. He wants to get to the bottom of it quickly. The fitness thing is something that he keeps bringing up repeatedly, and tomorrow night against Sparta Prague will be another sign of where we are fitness-wise. He spoke about the game against Hibs in terms of obviously Borna Barisic's injury, but also the fact that a few players actually struggled to complete the 90 minutes from a fitness perspective, and that's a concern in itself. There was a few players that came out and said it's a different type of fitness that the new manager wants. You kind of have to question that a little bit. Obviously, I think it was Cyril Dessers and Abdul Osman that both came out and said that in separate interviews. You kind of have to wonder about that a little bit. And
see, for that, what I find interesting is they're probably right. A lot of it is probably higher anaerobic stuff, considering that one thing that was very, very evident from the weekend is that high forward press. We always had 2 or 3 men in the front line pressing at all times, and we were getting joy out of it. So to me, that looks like a staple of how he goes about setting his teams up in the game plan, that you are going to have sort of the anaerobic sprints throughout your game, going and shutting centre-backs and full-backs down. So it probably is a different type of fitness when it comes to the strikers, as opposed to, for example, the guys at the back who aren't going to do as much of that. But I find it very strange about fitness, because the team fitness, when I remember rightly, when Bill was a coach here, was very, very good. And then under Gio, it was good, and then we tailed off again. It's strange. But I heard the comments of Clement talking about, well, maybe talking about training longer to prevent injury. So I don't know, things like more condition-based training and stuff like that. It's always interesting, and there's always a freshness when new managers come in with new ideas, and we're mostly open to it if we can see improvements on the pitch.
Absolutely, and D.I. Rebus coming in again. Desser's done a shift with the press against Hibs. I think, to be fair to Cyril Dessers, he's come in for a lot of criticism. He always puts in a shift. He's never shy of putting the work in. His quality on the ball, I guess, has been questionable at times so far, but he's never shied away from putting in a shift. And even some of the goals we saw him score in the highlight reels before he started, half of them came from chasing down defenders and forcing them into mistakes. So it's one thing he's definitely not scared of.
I know, I said it in the last pod. All I've seen all season is Cyril Dessers running towards a goalkeeper. Honestly. But here, if that works for Clement's style of play, then by all means, like, that is what we need. So I think we're all the same in the Dessers boat, that it's not been good for him. He's not started well. Maybe he's not fit for the team, but we are dying for him to do well. We're crying out for him to be a success at Rangers, and who knows if he will or he won't be, but the evidence isn't there. But buzzing to see him get off to a good start in the Clement era at the weekend.
Absolutely. We kind of sidetracked ourselves a wee bit from the left-back discussion there, so I'll pull us back in. We'll get full starting lineup predictions shortly, but in terms of the left-back situation, it looks like either Ben Davies or Adam Devine are the 2 options to go in there. Obviously, Ben Davies, left-sided centre-half, has a left foot. Not entirely sure how often, if he has played left-back at all. Adam Devine, we know, can play there, hasn't had much first-team game time. Is obviously new under the manager and is still developing as a young player. Who do you side with in the starting lineup for tomorrow?
I'll be really surprised if it's not Ben Davies. I think I recall back when we signed him, there was a comment that he was signed as a left-sided centre-back that can play left-back, because if you remember rightly, we sold a left-sided centre-back that played left-back in Calvin Bassey. So I'm not for one second saying that Davies was bought as a Bassey replacement, but he can play there. Like yourself, I don't know how many times he's played there in his career, but I'll be stunned if it's not Davies. But what I will say is, this might be a game that would suit him at left back. If we were to sit in and catch them on the break, you do tend to find that happens a lot for us away from home in Europe. So for me, I really wouldn't have a problem with Davies. We would lose an element of guys getting forward and supporting.
I was going to say, does that change the way we approach the game? Do you think, Jink, we'd probably go more down the right-hand side than we do the left-hand side? Tavernier kind of pushes up a bit further, becomes a back 3 centre-halves almost at times.
Possibly. Or I'll give you one right out of left field. No pun intended, by the way. Ben Davies goes into a back 3 and we go 3-5-2. And honestly, right, it would not surprise me to see Scott Wright starting at left fullback. Like, he seems to be the luckiest, most favoured guy that Rangers have ever signed. It just seems to get the start. Even
He always
recent
appeared.
history, he was basically the straw that broke the camel's back that get Bill sacked, misses the next game because his red card and comes straight back in for a start. Started the Europa League final. Have you ever seen anything like it?
There's a few other suggestions coming in here. I tend to agree with you, Kieran, and I think we'll see Ben Davies start at left back tomorrow night. The only concern slightly is potentially the lack of pace or the lack of forward thinking that potentially gives us, but he's a good passer of the ball. He'll be able to find players in that in the forward areas, but it's just whether he can support them and if he has any sort of final ball into the final third, or that just places more emphasis on sort of the wider forward players. In terms of who other people are saying, Paul McGarrigle says, Craig, what's your thoughts on Raskin playing left back? Played there for Belgium under 21s. They can tackle and get up and down. Can play Jack and Lundstrom in midfield. I think Raskin, going by his performance at the weekend, is too important for us in midfield to move him out to left back. No, not really a fan of a Jack and Lundstrom pairing in midfield. I don't know how you feel about that, Kieran, but it's a bit too defensive and a bit too sideways for my liking.
Yeah, I'll twist that slightly. I think Lundstrom could fill in at left back. He's left-footed. He can get forward. He plays in the back line. There's one that probably wouldn't surprise me more than it would others. But you're bang on. Raskin in the midfield, he showed at the weekend that he's willing to perform under the manager. I don't know if he's probably delighted it's a Belgian manager that's come in that comes from a good reputation of a league that he's played in. But out the three that he's mentioned there, Raskin, Jack and Lundstrom, for me, I'd be least surprised to see Lundstrom in at left back if that was the case. But if I was to put money on one guy, it would be Ben Davies.
Yeah, and the other option, I guess, come from RFC 72. John Leifeco as well can also play left back. We saw him play left back one of the early games in the league, didn't we? I can't remember which one it was specifically. But ultimately, RFC 72 goes for Ben Davies as left back and goes a back three in the attack. Plus, Prague are good from set pieces, so it gives us more of a presence there with Davies. So it does seem that Davies is probably the consensus amongst there. But what about the John Leifeco option?
I'm just not buying that at all. Would I be right in saying the last time he made a solid appearance was away to Hoffenheim?
It might have been. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Centre back with Balogun,
Yeah.
and if I remember right, he was a bit of a rabbit in the headlights, and just maybe a wee bit soon for him.
Might have been the League Cup game actually, if I remember right, against Morton.
Possibly.
Yeah, he played centre half that day.
Yeah, he looked good that day, but no disrespect to any Morton fans that might be watching. It's a different kettle of fish away from home in the Europa League. So, yeah, for me, it wouldn't be Leifeco. And you've got to look at the ripple effect in the team. If John Leifeco was to start at left back ahead of guys like Ben Davies and other pros that might seem to get the nod in there. But, yeah, I'll be surprised if it's not Ben Davies. But listen, we've said it all this pod. We're not really sure what Clement does. From what I listened to, Hart and Hand done a great series on it. They were interviewing journalists of the countries that Clement had managed in, and they did. The common theme throughout it was he does tend to change from a back four to a back three quite often, predominantly a back four, but he does like to chop and change between the two.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see on that one. A little bit more from the Philippe Clement press conference. This, I guess, Kieran gives a bit more insight into what Philippe Clement wants from his team, what he wants from the players, and what he wants to create. So this is a wee bit of a long one, but keen to get your thoughts afterwards. So he says, we need to show a better level, as this is a quality team that is good on the ball. We need to be on our toes, and on European evenings, you need to be focused and take your chances. We always play to win, regardless of home or away, and that is what we want to do here. But if we can win, then it is a big step in our group. I want to create a team that is dominant in every game against top opposition. We have quality in the squad, and I see players with good focus. We have areas where we can progress, and that is what we are going to work on. We need a fit squad, so we are sharp. I think he touched on a few points there that he's touched on pretty much every press conference so far, especially around they want to be a dominant team in every game, even against top opposition. What have you made of Philippe Clement so far? I think it's pretty much a week, maybe even just 6 days since he was appointed. What have you made of him so far, and what do you make of those kind of words from the press conference there?
Yeah, I think what's clear is that everything he says, he means in terms of what we've got from this is he has been very clear in terms of he wants to pass the ball forward. He wants the players to take more risk and play basically with the shackles off and no fear, especially in a place like Ibrox where the fans can get on your back. And we have seen players like Lundstrom, who was much better at the weekend, Barisic as well, the classic of passing the ball laterally and passing it back the way when the chips are down and the fans are getting on their back. And in terms of dominating the ball and passing the ball with more tempo, like these are things that we've took from the press conference, but that's not one or two press conferences. It's every press conference that this message is clear. So if we're taking it on board, it would be great to see what the players are taking on board. But yeah, and the message is very clear with him. I think that's the best way to put it, that he knows what he wants and he knows how he's going to go about it. Whether that comes to fruition is what we're all waiting to see, and we're dying for it to come to fruition and really work out for him. But for me, Craig, it sounds like you said it as well, a guy that's been round the block that really knows what he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was also talking up Abdul Osman in his press conference as well. Paul McGarrigle speaks about that in terms of tracking back and wants everyone to work hard. He seems to be a big fan of Abdul Osman, which is really positive. I've been impressed with how much he's come on. He looked really raw when he first came in. He looked a bit like Fashion Sakala, but a bit taller in terms of the way he was struggling to control the ball. He would take the first touch and then you wouldn't know what was going to happen, whether he was going to fall over the ball or whether he was going to hit it top corner like he did against PSV. He seems to be much more consistent now, and he seems to be, he's obviously scored in the last 6 games in a row, is that right? I think it's something like that.
I think he's 7 and 6 he's got now.
7 and 6, so he's obviously a big part of our team going forward. And do you see him being a focal point tomorrow night against Sparta Prague?
Yeah, I certainly do. I'd love to see him played through the middle. I know he played left of a front three at the weekend, sometimes found himself more central. And I don't know if you heard Billy Reid's interview on him, just completely singing his praises about getting him in at Brighton and having to get him out on loan. I actually think it was in the Sun he'd done that interview, and having to get him out on loan so that he could maybe learn more about himself and learn more about British football and the language barrier and stuff like that. And to be honest, I knew he would come good. I know I've got my doubts about Seymour, Dessers and Lammers, etc. But I knew that Seymour would come good because I remember him from when he played at Ibrox against us with Slavia Prague, and he led the line so well. Back then he was a 19-year-old boy. This guy's 22 years old. And I'll be honest.
It's easy to forget how young he is, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And he's a guy playing with confidence. See, I know people have been talking about his second finish at the weekend, but that first finish is unbelievable. He's not even laced it. That's inside of the boot. It's not even curled towards the keeper. It's went straight in the side net. And then David Marshall's a good goalkeeper, and to beat him from there right in that bottom corner that is a frightening finish. And it's been a joy to watch his progression, and he seems like a good guy to have around Rangers. The players radiate towards him, and he's a player playing with confidence just now. The last time I was on here as well, I said it just feels like Rangers are a social experiment for us fans, that they've been made to frustrate us. That this feels like Malik Tillman all over again. Listen, I'll not complain if he scores us to a few trophies this season.
Absolutely. I don't know if you saw any of the PSV Lons game last night in Champions League, but Malik Tillman started and was completely non-existent in the whole game. So, yeah. I'm not sure how much of an impact he's making, but I've seen a few Dutch commentators saying he's flattering to deceive at this moment in time in Holland. So it's an interesting one, and one that I guess we all watch with a wee bit of interest. After Philippe Clement was Todd Cantwell, who was up. Obviously, came back from injury at the weekend. He said, "We were going through a tough period, but to win convincingly at home has been good for the players and provided a good confidence boost." He said, "It was difficult not being able to play, and you feel helpless when you're injured, not being able to impact results. We are really looking forward to getting out there tomorrow." How big a a return, is it, for Todd Cantwell and for his role within Rangers, and how important can he be to pushing us forward?
Oh, it's absolutely huge. Like when we talk about the Clement era starting at the weekend and Dessers getting a goal and things being more positive, like nothing's gave us a bigger lift than Todd Cantwell coming back. He's our best player by a mile. He's probably one of our best signings in a long, long time. So to have him back is absolutely brilliant. And I just like listening to him as well. I don't know if you listened to the Beautiful Game pod that he was on. Like, it was a really good listen. He just comes across as a real grounded, intelligent guy, and not the type of guy that people make out that he is, just going by his social media profiles. But yeah, it's such a boost. And for me, once we're going to talk about the lineup, what I will say, and I don't know if many people will agree with this, and it might sound like I'm off my head, but I would be playing Todd Cantwell in a front two of a main focal point striker. I've been championing this for a while, and I feel that, see, when you watch it, Dessers goal at the weekend, the way he draws 4 or 5 guys with him and reverses that pass, we've not really got anybody else that's got that in the locker. Play him in the front three, look at the penalties he's won coming around the blind side of defenders, things just like that. He is so dangerous around that.
Sorry, Kieran, for you, is he taking on the role that Sam Lammers has kind of been in at this moment in time in terms of where he's sat in the front three?
Absolutely. Like, for Lammers, it goes the same as Dessers. We're crying out for him to do well, but at this moment in time, I just don't see it. He seems a good big guy. He seems like the players like him and they're dying for him to do well. But we're now at the stage where we're starting to get a few bodies back. Danilo, Cantwell, the two of them have got to feature up there a lot more. So Seamus scoring as well. So competition for places in the front line are increasing. But by all means, Todd Cantwell cannot be part of a middle three. He's got to play in that forward line. So if we are to go 3-5-2, Cantwell would be one of my forward guys that would link the midfield to the main focal point striker.
I think so, and I think that's where we all envisioned him being in terms of his strengths when he first came in. He's played in on the right hand side, he's played on the left hand side, he's played as part of the midfield three rather than the front three, and actually that was more, I guess, Michael Beale's system that was trying to shoehorn him into somewhere that could get as much out of him as we could. Whereas actually Philippe Clement, one of the things he did on Saturday was just play players in the position where they like to play and where they have the most strengths, and we saw the benefits of that. I think we'll see that from Todd Cantwell as well. I think he does try too much sometimes. He can probably release the ball a little bit quicker, and we'll see more success from that. But he's going to be a huge part of our game going forward, and he'll be a key player not only for tomorrow night and I'm going to say in Sparta, not only for tomorrow night in Prague, but going forward for the rest of the season. Right, let's move on and talk about predicted lineups. We've spoken about the left back side of things, I guess, already, but what's your predicted starting lineup for tomorrow night, Kieran?
Predicted starting lineup, going by what we've got available, I would go Butland and goals. So I'll go 4-3-3, go Butland and goals, right back Tav, left back Ben Davies. It's going to be Suter and Goldson centre back, and then you're going to have a middle three of Lundstrom, Jack and Raskin, because we've not really got anything else in there at the moment, with Cifuentes still been injured. And then your front three is probably going to be Dessers up front, Cantwell off the left and Sima on the right, or the other way about. To me, going by the weekend, just we're looking at this in small bite size because it is only one game. We didn't really play with a lot of width, which stood out to me. So that will be interesting to see how that front two behind whoever the main striker is plays. But yeah, I'd be surprised if that wasn't the lineup. Like, if you get many changes from that?
No, I think that's pretty much where I'm sitting as well. I think the interesting thing might be Dessers or Danilo, because obviously Danilo's come back from injury. It's a facial injury. We don't know how much his fitness has been impacted on that, how much he needs to get up to game speed, etc. But interestingly, RFC 72 has Scott Wright in there, and so does Pete Lawrence. Also has Scott Wright in there. What do you think are Scott Wright's chances of starting tomorrow night? He did also start the game on Saturday.
I'm trying to work that out. I take it that's a 4-4-2 with Butland in goals, Davies left back, Suter Goldson centre back, Tav right back. And then your middle two would be Lundstrom, Raskin. And then probably, let's see, Wright on the left, Sima on the right, and Dessers Cantwell up front, something like that.
No, I think you're probably still looking at a 4-3-3 there. Your midfield three would be Lundstrom, Raskin, Cantwell, with Dessers centre forward, Wright on the right hand side, and Sima on the left would be how I read that one.
Yeah, possibly, but I think that is a fair shout as well, because Lundstrom and Jack I thought done very well as a pairing at the weekend. Like, how often have we said that in the past long time? They looked like a proper partnership in the middle of the park that looked like they were doing exactly what was asked of them, and they knew it was being asked of them.
Yeah, I think so. There's plenty of people seem to think that Scott Wright will be starting tomorrow night, so that'll be really interesting. I don't think he did himself any harm in the game on Saturday. Just whether the returning injured players are have got enough to carry forward and play a bit more minutes. Bluebells are blue, showing you up here saying Jack didn't play. He didn't play, which is correct. On Saturday, it was Raskin and Lundstrom. And
did I say Jack and Lundstrom? I'm just so used to saying that. No, Raskin and Lundstrom. I was there, don't worry, I seen it all. But again, is Jack fit enough for tomorrow night? He's just back from injury as well.
Don't know. He's not been playing well anyway. Even if he is fit, he's not been playing well in the slightest. So I don't know whether I would even give him a shot from the start tomorrow, or if I probably would be more minded to go towards the same midfield that started the weekend there. We spoke about earlier on about if we can get 4 points from the next two games against Sparta Prague, we'll be in a really strong position. What's your score prediction for tomorrow night?
Oh, I've been too positive tonight. I'm going to go a horrible 2 each.
A horrible 2 each?
You know, it's been a while since we've absolutely ran amok against someone away from home in Europe, but I hope we do, because we would be absolutely buzzing with the Clement coming in, a good win at the weekend and then a good win tomorrow night. But just away games in Europe just stuck in my teeth that I just think...
Do you not fancy a Spartak Moscow throwback where it's just end to end and there's goals every 2 minutes?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of entertaining football, so I wouldn't mind at all. What have you got for this one?
And my head says 1 each. My heart says we'll sneak a 2-1. But I think as long as we get out there without defeat, I think it's a really positive result. Not entirely sure what to expect from Sparta Prague in terms of not entirely sure what to expect from Rangers in terms of the level of performance we'll put in as well, which is it's always a bit of a lottery at this moment in time. But I'm hoping that we get out of there with at least a point and we can continue this sort of positive momentum since Philippe Clement come in, because I think once you get going on that train, it can be a really hard thing to stop. So hopefully we keep going on that front, well in the driving seat in terms of going through in the group. And like you say, the second half of the group stage, we've got 2 games at home, which can only be an advantage. I think we'll round it off there. Kieran, thank you very much for joining us. I know you've had a lot of driving today out in the road for work, so thank you very much for joining us, and you were coherent in all your answers, which is a real positive.
Yes, I've done well to keep my eyes open, so not to say that you're not entertaining, Craig. It's always a pleasure to be on with you, mate. So let's look forward to a good Rangers result tomorrow night. I think that's all we ask for, and a wee bonus would be a really good performance. So let's get this Clement era really up and running.
Absolutely. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. If you've enjoyed the content, please give the video a like, leave a comment with anything that you have agreed or disagreed with. Remember to subscribe to the TII YouTube channel. You get a notification every time we go live. We'll be added to your subscription list as well. In terms of what we've got coming up, Ross and John Walker, I believe, will be back with an immediate post-match reaction to the game tomorrow night, so look out for that one. And then it'll be full steam ahead towards Rangers versus Hearts at Ibrox on Sunday, which Kyle and I will be in attendance for. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and until next time, goodbye.